addicted to things, anything, gambling, whatever. And then you're going to talk about one of them will be should start. We will start and talk about sex, peer pressure. Yeah, yeah. It's on the timing now. Sex, peer pressure. Sometimes genetic influences and you know you know sex, peer pressure. No, not sex. Things that make them become prone to addiction or what makes them risk factors.
us in sanctuary and for those who are joining us online. This evening, we're here once again in one of our health series, and today we will be exploring the topic, what is hijacking your health? If you recall, last week we discussed this topic, and today is a follow-up, the part 2. So welcome again, and to begin, we will just bow our head for a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this evening. We thank you for this Sabbath. As we explore another topic related to health, we ask that you will be among us, be with those persons online. I pray that you will bring a blessing to those persons who are listening. In Jesus' name, amen. So what is hijacking your health? Now, if you were with us last week, you would have recognized that what we're talking about is addiction. And last week we had a panel who discussed various types of addiction. So we spoke about substance abuse, we spoke about addiction to things like sex and gambling and all different types of addiction. This week, we are going to explore the management of addiction. So with us, we have a panel of health professionals with whom we're going to discuss the management of addiction. Now, by way of introduction, to my immediate right, we have Miss Anya Millings. She's a mental health nurse, and she's also a registered nurse as well. Welcome, Anya.
Thank you.
To her right, we have Miss Larice Williams. She's a social worker by profession, a trained HIV case manager, and she currently is working as a substance abuse counselor with the National Council on Drug Abuse, with emphasis on providing treatment for the Kingston and St. Andrew Drug Treatment Court Substance Abuse Rehabilitation Program. That's a mouthful. It just shows that she's an expert in her area. Welcome, Larice. And to her right, we have Mr. Richard Henry from Rise Life Management Services. He's a program manager, program for the prevention and treatment and research of gambling disorders and responsible gambling. Welcome, Mr. Henry. And we're going to touch on that responsible gambling a little later. That sounds very interesting. So, by way of recap, and I'm just going to throw this question out to the general panel. What puts persons at risk of developing addiction? What are some of the risk factors? Anybody wants to take that one on?
I'll start. Okay, some risk factors basically is like how they manage stress, because when different persons react differently to stress. So some persons use different coping mechanisms. Some are good, some are not good. Some persons get introduction to a substance from peer pressure or being introduced by family members or seeing family members using the substance, and they do it out of curiosity to see how they feel when they use the substance. So that's some of the basic, that's how persons get their start with the substance.
Any other comment on this?
I think it's important to know that there is, among people in general, there is no one road for someone to get into an addiction. People get into addiction from all different angles. And why that is important, because that's going to determine how they get out. So we don't have treatments that are set in stone. What works for somebody may not work for someone else. So it's important for us to understand that people may get in because of peer pressure. Someone might be stressed, someone might be suffering from a psychiatric issue, and they use marijuana or some other substance to feel better. So there are different ways for people to get in, but certainly we have to work on getting them out.
Thank you.
Certainly. And there are a number of risk factors, including ourselves. Forgetting how to cope with everyday life. Forgetting to practice good coping habits. you know, exposure to trauma, abuse. So many things can cause someone to become addicted. Stress at work. Stress is definitely the #1 cause. There are a lot of factors that causes stress. I mean, we all experience stress every day, but it's how we deal with it that matters. And sometimes there's a breakdown in how we deal with it because of other factors. We may just not be practicing good self-care. Addiction is broad, but the concept is the same no matter what. Nobody gets up one day and decides that they're going to become addicted. Oh, I just want to become an addict. Don't it? Nobody really just says, this is the path that I'm going to take with my life. And so anything that breaks down in our lives, in our daily lives, can cause us to become addicted.
So it sounds like, as with many other things, prevention is always better than cure, or easier than cure.
True, prevention and just a constant, you know, every month we check on everything else. We check on the car to make sure the car is running, and we go and service it. But do we check on ourselves? Is it just our health, or do we check on our mental health? Are we doing what we should emotionally? We tend to neglect those areas and focus on the others. And that is one thing that we need to change. We need to become so, we need to incorporate taking care of our mental health and our emotional health just as much as we do everything else. If we get a headache, we go to the doctor. But if we feel stressed, what do? We find another way, and because of that, sometimes it leads to addiction.
So let's get into that a little more in terms of almost mental checklist to check yourself out and make sure that you're okay, and then if you're not, then you need to take the remedial steps. Can someone expound on that a little bit for me? Because I know that when I'm not feeling good, I can recognize, I feel a little way today, and I might be able to recognize what is causing me to feel that way and then make appropriate adjustments. But not everyone necessarily has those skills. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I think some of that comes with the belief that having a negative emotion isn't something that's good. And so people tend to try and shy away from that. But we're having a little discussion before we started, and that people get into addiction because, or use of drugs or behavior because it changes the way that they feel. If when we drank alcohol, it did nothing to us at all, people don't drink alcohol because it tastes nice. People drink alcohol because if you drink 2, it will make you feel different. So all of addiction is connected to feelings. How people manage feelings and the discipline of doing that is very difficult. I mean, we work in the field and work in some places where we encourage people daily to check in how you feel. When I get up, I'm aware of that. So how I react to someone, I can check back and say, well, this is why I was like that. But that's real discipline. The average person has to really you have to really teach them that, and they have to have a desire and see the end product. How does this help me throughout the day? Because throughout the day, you are going to go through a myriad of emotions. A lot of people get stuck on 1 or 2 and carry that with them throughout the day. You have to understand that emotions come and emotions go, and that you're going to feel better later on, and that you have the capacity to change that as well.
So in terms of helping persons understand emotions, at what stage should we really be addressing this?
We should never stop, because every day, every single day is a new day, comes with new challenges.
So should we start with our children?
We should definitely start with our children, and we should continue even with ourselves, because we tend to take care of everybody else and not look at ourselves, and others are looking at us. Our children are looking at how we manage stress, how we adapt, how much screen time do we have. And nowadays, we're saying the children are spending a lot of time on their phones, playing games. how much are we spending time on our tablet, on our phones as well? We have to look at both sides, but it's something that we should just incorporate into our everyday life. How am I feeling this morning? How did I do yesterday? Am I okay? What do I need to do better today? Is my family doing well? What is happening? Have I noticed any changes in their behavior? Is my child spending more time in the room rather than with everybody else? How are we connecting? Are we connecting? When was the last time we sat down and we had family worship together, or sat down and had dinner together in the week and not on the weekend? Because the root of all addiction really is pain. Whether it's emotional pain, whatever it is, pain is pain. And the soil of addiction, of course, is abuse, it's trauma, it's all of those things. It's shame, it's guilt, it's shame. I'm not doing enough. There's so many things that could cause us to, derail and become addicted.
Okay, thank you very much. Something just came to mind when we spoke about handling stress and that kind of stuff. And you see it a lot in, if you watch the US media, that kind of stuff. Almost every day you hear about some mass shooting. Somebody gets laid off from work or something like that, and then, there's easy access to firearms, and they just go in and spray bullets everywhere. So it almost appears like there's an epidemic of, should I say, an inability to manage stress.
If you dig a little deeper, some of it has to do with the perception of stress. So, you can have two people in the same situation who have lost their job, and then there's one person who says, well, listen, I'm going to be resilient, I'm going to come back, I'm going to try and get another job, maybe I'll look for a different area. And then there's another person who will say, well, now I can't take care of my family, this is the end of the road, I'm worthless, etc., etc. So for me, there's a lot that has to do with everything in life about your perception of things and how healthy your perception is.
So we have spoken about stress and trauma and things like that, pushing us into various habits that may eventually become addictive. And from our previous program, we understood that the process of addiction, what happens in the brain and the various neurotransmitters and that kind of stuff, which is self-reinforcing. So you start a behavior and you get pleasure from it, and you continue that behavior, and sometimes the satisfaction that you got at first, you don't get it, but you still continue to try and seek after that satisfaction. You do more and more and more, and it's no longer a psychological thing, but it's also a physical thing as well, because your brain actually changes. So it's not something easy to, once you are in it, to necessarily step back. And I think it is important for persons to understand this, because you may be sitting out there saying, well, I don't have any problems with addiction, I'm fine. The person sitting next to you may be struggling. And you're like, why is he struggling with this? Why not just give it up? Or it's not that easy. And we need to be understanding of our fellow person, the challenges of addiction, and sensitive in order to help those persons through this as well. I see you nodding, Richard.
Your support is very important. And if you work in the field, you understand that I have a gentleman who works with me now, and he has been through treatment at least 10 times, to the point where I was his therapist, and I would see him and I would say, the only person I know that can help you get out of this addiction is God. I honestly did not have an answer. He's clean now, 10 years, going. New family, life is better. A lot of it has to do with, giving people hope. It is very difficult to get out of addiction. The recidivism rate is very high. But because we work in the area, we understand that if someone relapses, that's not the end of the road. The relapse can actually be part of the journey. I've had clients tell me that they realized that they needed to come back into treatment when he was in New Kingston and reached into the garbage pan to eat some food that somebody left. That's when he actually saw himself after being in treatment for maybe 6, 7 years. That was a turnaround. We don't know what the turnaround is for people, but our job is to continue to give them the hope that they can do it. And the truth is, most people can come out of addiction. It takes a lot of work and a lot of support, but they can.
And, go ahead.
One thing I know is, if the rewards are there, anyone can become addicted to almost anything. And that is pretty crazy, isn't it? But if an activity or substance produces a burst of dopamine or serotonin, you can get hooked just on the reward that it produces. Now, we can't do without rewards in our lives. That's what we look for. That's what we live. That's what gives us that. That's what we live for, the reward. I don't know about you, but if the sun is shining outside, you probably get up that day and you wear something bright and cheerful. But if it's cloudy and dark, either you want to stay in bed and just be, or you tend to wear something a little bit more, So everything impacts our lives. Can we get over it? Yes, we have to take control of that reward center and relearn what we learned to cope. When a baby is learning to walk, that child has to fall a lot of times, and then they get up again and walk. So we literally have to go back, and then once you're addicted, it's a lifetime of recovery. There's no quick fix. And most persons don't know that they're addicted. I can't tell you how many persons come to me and say, all right, how do you know when you start misusing or when you're becoming addicted? Most persons don't know that it's a thin line. It's a very, very thin line.
I want to just pick up on a point that you made, that there's a concept in the field of addiction called delay of gratification. And it's a very important concept, because when people get into an addiction, there's this idea among addicts that I want what I want and I want it now. And a lot of that comes from the same brain circuitry and dopamine and reward system. One of the things that we have to teach them is that you do not get what you want, when you want it, and how you want it. That is a lesson that takes a while. It might not even be connected to addiction. Just in our lives in general, being able, and delay of gratification is simply who can wait to be paid. Some people get paid weekly, some fortnightly, some at the end of the month. And so that ability to be able to be patient and to be able to see ahead of you that things are going to be okay is a very basic concept, but a very important one.
One point I'd like to point out, though, is that when persons are addicts and they want to recover, it's not something that we as family members or their support system force onto them. They have to be willing to want to make the change. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense, because if they don't want the change for themselves, there's nothing that you as their support system can do.
But that would be very difficult, as say a family member or a fellow church member, because persons in the church have addictions, of course. We may not be aware of them, but we have persons here who are struggling with alcohol and cigarette smoke and harder drugs and pornography and that kind of stuff. But isn't it hard as, say, a family member or friend to look at someone struggling with addiction and perceive that they don't want to be helped? How can you sit by and do nothing almost?
It's not a matter of sitting by and doing nothing. You can be there for them, you can speak to them, but you can't force them to join the program. You can just continue talking to them, show them the differences that is happening with when they were sober to when they're now on the substance. Try to talk to them, show them love and support still. But sometimes you do have to set your boundaries. So like if you used to give them the $100 every day and stuff, and you know that they're definitely using to buy the substance, instead of giving them the cash, you buy the things that they need for their basic support.
And
so
then
like
they go and sell the stuff.
So,
no, I'm not talking about like the food and stuff that they need for everyday thing. You're not going to buy the big TV and give them because you know they'll sell it. So you have to be careful.
there's another additional point to what she's saying is that, so in the field, some places you can't get into the treatment program unless you call saying, hi, I'm Richard, I have a problem. Because it's not like you're having a stomach issue and you go to the doctor, and whether you want the medication or not, if we hold you down and give it to you, you'll get well. You can't hold somebody down and give them counseling. So people have to be receptive and open. One of the ways, though, that we get people into treatment is the same family. People will call and say, I need to do an intervention, which is the family sitting down, so they'll get an interventionist. They'll have a meeting before saying, John is having a problem, we can't deal with it anymore, we need to put some stipulations on him. How can we do this? And we meet with John, and the family says, John, if you don't go to treatment, you can't live here anymore. So the idea is to take away from John all the things that he thinks is important, and finally force him to start to think about doing something different. And so if he loves his family, if he hears his mother saying, listen, I've been dealing with this for 20 years, it's very difficult, it's stressed me out, it's causing problems, that might push him into treatment. So she's right, you can't force people in, but there are mechanisms that you can use to sort of awaken that spirit that I need to go and get help.
Can I just remind everyone, there are different types of addictions. It's not just drugs, but there's addiction to exercise, work, the internet, porn, shopping, sex, everything. As I said, anything can become an addiction. When it comes to family members, forcing persons or even reprimanding them is not going to help. One of the things that we note about why people become addicted is that it's repeatedly doing the same thing, knowing the consequences, knowing that it's a problem, and still being unable to stop or to change. That's the nature of addiction. Most persons who are addicted, whether it is even to picking up the phone, have guilt, have shame. Oh my goodness, I wasted the whole day. I didn't get to do this. There's guilt and shame already. You really don't have to beat up on them. They are beating up on themselves daily. And that then propels them to go and do what? Try to feel good. What makes us feel good? Those rewards. And that is why they chase it so much. And that is why persons who abuse hard drugs tend to want it so much. That feeling, especially if that feeling wears off pretty quickly, then they're going to want that feeling again rather quickly. And so they're going to have to do whatever it takes to get there. I know persons who would rather not eat to ensure that they have data on their phone. You just can't go down. What am I going to do during the day if I don't have data on my phone or Wi-Fi? You understand what I'm saying to you? So addiction, fighting or overcoming addiction is almost like rewiring the brain. But something that we tell families is, one, addiction, the best treatment for addiction is connection. If you're not connected to something, then you're going to feel isolated. And a lot of things have broken down, especially now that we know that's going to break down, because the Bible says that the family is one of the things that the devil is going to target. You know what I mean? But the family is not just the family at home. It's the family here at church. It's the family everywhere. Any structure that looks like it's going to provide support is going to get a fight. Not true? And then we don't help the process because we have stopped trying to reconnect or connect with persons. We're no longer practicing forgiveness. We're no longer saying, okay, let me be my brother's keeper. We really need to start bringing back all of those things into our everyday practice. Why? That's the only treatment for addiction. Now, I I have the opportunity of working with persons who come before the court for whatever reasons. And I can tell you, families will just come and say, here, fix them. I can't do it no more. Or please don't call my phone until you fix him. You know what I'm saying to you? Like, we have these things available for as young as they are, but nobody will bring them in and stick with it. But once it gets bad, here, fix them. No, it should start from those conversations. Like the conversation about ganja. Nobody wants to talk about ganja. But ganja have so many good properties. That's not even the point. The point is, our children know everything is about information. If we're not talking about it, then they're going to do what? Be making choices on their own. You understand? One of the areas that addiction affects as well is our ability to make decisions. That is the area that it targets. So reward and decisions, two very important aspects of our lives. And those are the two areas. Because if you're stressed, even if you know you have the bills to pay, you're going to say, no, JPS, I'm going to wait. I am going to go shopping because them stress me out. You understand? Instead of, let me find somebody that will listen. There are, just as though there are doctors and health centers and everything for everything else, there is help there for mental health. We don't have to wait until it's bad to get help. We should normalize talking about it at home and normalize actually going out there to do it so that we can counteract these addictions. Sorry.
Indeed, indeed. So let's get very practical here now. Let's say that I have a spouse and she has a problem with alcohol abuse. She's addicted to alcohol. What resources are available to help her with her addiction? And this is not actually the case. I'm just saying, you know.
Let's just put that out there. Okay, well, there are addiction counselors. You have many different ways that you can start. You can either see your regular GP and ask them for a referral. You can walk in. There's treatment sites across the island. National Council on Drug Abuse has those there. Has an officer in every single parish. Once you call the helpline, you schedule an appointment. It doesn't have to be. It could be that you just suspect it and you want to check, or you want to check how bad the addiction is, or if it is in fact there, or you want a test done. It is completely free. I think you only pay for the testing, but it's not something that is, mandatory. If you don't have it, we're not going to test you. But you can walk in at any time during work hours and be seen by a counselor or schedule an appointment. You can call and schedule an appointment.
You have to also think about too, if it's alcohol or anything like or an opiate, the person may need to go into a detox. All right, so
we have those?
Yes, we do.
We do offer a 3 weeks program at the University Hospital at the Addiction Treatment Services Unit, and that's where I currently work. So most persons, before they go into the long-term facilities such as Patricia House or Teen Challenge in St. Anne, yes, they would normally come to us first. Because especially with the alcohol abuse, especially if the person is severe alcoholic and have been doing it for over amount of years, the withdrawal symptoms can be deadly. So
what are some of those symptoms?
The most dangerous ones are the delirium tremors.
Break that down for me. Delirium
That's,
tremors, what is that?
When the person is having the withdrawals, they have tremors, they can end up having high fevers, they can have seizures, stuff like that. So when they come to us, we normally monitor them. They will be placed on medication to help them to cope with the symptoms of the withdrawal. The medication, we normally start them at a level and then you bring them down. So within the first week, we try to get them off the medication, but we just monitor the symptoms that they're having. As the nurses, that's what we would basically do. So that's one of the most dangerous ones, the alcohol. Even though it might look that simple, the withdrawal from it can be very severe. You have persons that are also on other substances. We do monitor withdrawal symptoms for those as well, but sometimes they don't need the medication to help them with it. So we just monitor them, talk to them, counsel them throughout the process while they're there with us.
So in terms of the detox unit at the university hospital, is it someplace I can just walk into? Can I just walk into A&E and say, you know, I think I need to get a detox kind of thing? Check myself in?
Yes, you normally have to go through A&E department because you have to be assessed properly first, because we don't want to put you down there and you're not medically stable. When we say medically stable, you have other medical conditions underlying that can cause problems, because the thing with the detox unit, it is a distance from the rest of the hospital regular wards. So we normally make sure that they're cleared proper medically. So we do like an ECG, stuff like that for them first, a CT scan, blood works, to make sure that if they're even not fully 100%, we can have them on the unit with the basic monitoring, because we don't have certain equipment down there on that unit to manage certain conditions. So we have to go through A&E first and foremost.
So just so that folks understand that the difference is there are some substances that come with more physiological withdrawal than psychological. So those that come with psychological mainly, those can be treated and the person can possibly go to an outpatient. For a substance like alcohol and other opiates, they would need to be in-house and being medically supervised, because people do occasionally die from the withdrawal symptoms that they experience from, say, alcohol withdrawal. Because remember, now you're saying, I'm in treatment, I'm not using any more alcohol. And the body is going to be saying, where's this alcohol that you've been giving me for so long? And so that's where the medication comes in. And of course, there's going to be psychological work that has to be done to get the person to realize that you don't need to have alcohol to live, because they would have sold themselves on that for many years. Before I close, the key factor is you're the husband, you're going to probably need to get some counseling as well. Because there's a high possibility that you may be codependent. You may have been, not directly and not
source
knowingly.
of the stress?
Yeah, you may have been enabling some of this drinking, and because you've lived with her for the last 10, 15 years, you have settled into the pattern of how we operate in the house with mommy who drinks. So you're going to have to break those patterns, because hopefully who is coming back home to you is new mommy or new wife. You're going to have to develop some new habits and ways to be able to deal with her. So counseling would be recommended.
Yes, go ahead, Louise.
I have to share with you, in the drug treatment court, our slogan is recovery is a journey, not an event. And it encompasses the whole family and community. So it's like dropping a pebble to water. It's going to impact the whole glass. So if one person is not functioning or having issues, it's going to impact the family, children, work, economics. Everything is going to be impacted at some point in time. When I've noticed persons come to go to the grocery, and if you have to budget out what you're going to budget out the grocery money to feed your addiction, there is a problem. And so it definitely is going to impact relationships. And so we always say, most persons will say, I have this person, I have this family member. What we love to encourage is come in with them. The best thing you can do for them is say, look, can I go with you? Can I go with you? Can I be your buddy, your partner through this journey? It's going to be hard on both, but come in with them.
One of the things that we do encourage as well at SU, we have what you call a family group, Addiction Treatment Services Unit. We have what we call a family group that is offered every other Tuesday. So the family members would come in. We have a group session with them and the patients, so they get to express how they feel. And we also have psychoeducation for the family members. Because especially with persons, so you said their wives is, say, on alcohol, we need to educate them on the fact that there's a lot of things out there with alcohol that the wife or the person cannot have, such as the store-bought ice-names that you use on your cake, vanilla, those things we have to take in consideration. So we normally have these educational sessions.
Rude.
So we have these educational sessions with the family members to educate them. And we also educate them on signs and symptoms to pick up when your family members is relapsing. Because you have different phases for relapse. You have the emotional, the mental, and the physical. So we always try to educate them on those things as well.
So it sounds like there are resources available in terms of counseling and that kind of stuff. So we have groups like Alcoholics Anonymous and that kind of stuff here. Do we have that kind of stuff?
Yes. You have, in Kingston here, because part of our program is that we bring the patients to Narcotics Anonymous meetings twice a week, and that's held at St. Peter's and Paul Prep School. It's held 7 days a week, though.
But let me just be honest. We have treatment available, but we don't have enough. And we need to do, all of us need to do a lot better in terms of pushing for more different types of treatment. So we talk about the university, Teen Challenge, that's a purely religious-based organization. And so people require different types of interventions. And so, I mean, back in the day, we used to have, the Patricia House is still, it's revamped, so, which is excellent. But we need to make available more places, especially residential, where people can, you know, come away from the family for a while, find themselves, and be able to get well.
I agree. And I can tell you that even our churches need to do more. As I said, if we normalize talking about these topics, you'd be surprised how much it helps. Now, one of the things that we do in the drug treatment court is all our clients that willingly come in, now it's an alternative to sentencing, but once they come, they have to want to be there, or else you're not going to be admitted at all, because change is personal. And it doesn't matter how we want it, they will not choose change unless they're ready. And so we always check to see their readiness for change. But one of the things that works for them is understanding that they're not alone. No one cares what you know until they know how much you care. No one, and I learned that from the Nandish. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Even your family members. If I feel like you don't care, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to respond to you in that way. I'm going to hope that you do. So if we constantly do like what Jesus does for us, doesn't matter what we do, He's there. It doesn't matter what we do. When they come to us, I can tell you, I don't have to like my clients to treat them, because sometimes they're not very likable. But I have to love them enough to want to find 100 ways to help, and if that 100 ways ends, I have to find another 100 until, okay. So you don't even have to like someone to love them enough to just care. You might not like them at this moment, but continue to pour into them. I mean, any one of us can become addicted. What would you want your family members to do? What would you want the community?
And I guess that must be, you know, when you're dealing with someone with an addiction in a professional setting, that has its challenges. But I'm sure it's even more challenging in a family setting where it's a spouse or a child, because you want to show them that you care, but you don't want to perpetuate the behavior that they are engaging in. How challenging can that be?
Tough love. Tough love.
How tough, though? Do you kick them out of the house, or
here's
what?
the point.
Tell me.
Here's the point. If they don't get well, you don't have a wife. That's for sure. If she does not get well, that relationship is going to be destroyed. So there is a point at which I consider recovery to be a very selfish time. And I sometimes ask my clients, don't think about anybody else, because everybody else that you're telling me about that you love, they can't love you until you're well. And you can't love them in a way that you ought to until you get better. So you say, you miss my kids and all of this. And I'm saying that while you were using, you were not missing them. The way that you are going to be able to love them in the way that you ought to, and what they would love to see is for you to be better. And so you have to begin to work on you. And that changes the dynamics of a lot of relationships. Because as people get well, and we have seen relationships and marriages that don't work out because the person who was ill, addicted, got better and started to see life different. She operated differently when she was drinking. She was dependent on you. But now she has this level of independence and this freedom and is seeing the future. You better see the future with her as well.
Larissa, it looked like you had a comment, or was that Anya?
Okay. You spoke about love. One of the activities that we do is that we have some words that we call the areas of mastery, that each patient has to choose a word every morning after devotion, and you meditate on that word throughout the day. Love is one of those words, and I always talk to them about self-love. How do you expect somebody to love you when you can't love yourself in the first place?
Let me tell you, it's impossible to solve a problem without knowing what the problem is. It's impossible to solve a problem without accepting that that is the problem. So until that person understands that they have a problem, it's not going to be solved. They may put a Band-Aid over it to, ensure that everybody eases up on them, but it's not going to be fixed. So they have to know that they have a problem. One of the things that we do when anyone comes in is to do an assessment. And that assessment tells us or shows us what's happening in their lives. So what we look for is the why. Why is this person before us? Why is this person addicted? And what we tell persons is you have to do that self-examination. Every single day you go to pray, you can pray, but what are you praying for if you have not assessed what is going on and asking God for that kind of? You have to do that amount of self-assessment. It's not just when things are going bad. Every day, how am I feeling today? Feelings check. Family, how are you feeling? Are you feeling anxious today? Are you feeling... I was at a prominent school this week, and I was about to do, to help facilitate a Strive program, to help to teach them how to cope and, instill those techniques that they can use to navigate the stressful life of being in school. And I saw a young lady comforting another one who was inconsolable. Like, I had to put on my counselor hat and like, all right, this looks tragic, like she lost a family member or something. It was that bad. And so I went up to them prior to the event starting, and I said, okay, all right, can I talk to you? What's happening? And we went outside, and she said, okay, you can. She got 95 on a Spanish test and just missed 100 by 5 points. And she was in complete shambles. I kid you not. Like, I was so concerned, like, I'm wondering if that's the only thing. And I had to say to her, okay, all right, cool, tell you what. I know you wanted the 100, right? Fine. But are you telling me that you're going to delay the celebration of the 95 points just because of the one? And she cracked a smile, and she was like, oh my God, never thought about it that way. And then I can just hear parents, everybody in there, why didn't you get that extra 5? Why didn't you this? Why didn't you that? And what we don't understand is these children are going through so many things at school that they will not talk about because you have not opened the floor for them to talk without judgment. They don't want you to fix it. They just want you to hear them. And we come up like those children, and we become self-reliant. But it breaks down our resilience when we have to just internalize everything. We are human beings. As babies like to do what? Hug. During COVID, when you couldn't touch anybody, how you feel? It feel bad. When last you hug somebody? You don't have to say anything to support someone. We have to practice words of affirmation. Even if we're going to reprimand. I remember my mom used to, I hope mom is not watching. I remember my mom used to get up in the morning and we'd all be busy in the day and we'd be doing worship. But if there's a behavior that she needs to correct, I can tell you she joined for the scripture. Not true. But it felt like it was, that was a time for our reprimand if we did anything wrong. And so as youngsters, we used to feel like, I'm in a wang of a morning worship. And then it became a chore until we learned what morning worship was. You know what I mean? Now, in our faith, we have the AY pledge, the AY law. Keep a song in your heart. Go on God's errands. All of these things are meant to help us to cope. Are we practicing that? No, we're not. And we're definitely not being our brother's keeper. Our brother's keeper only means ensuring that we what? Don't judge and we breathe life into them, just like how God breathes life into us. Mm-hmm. That is stress management 101. Mm-hmm. Connections. If you're not connected to anything, then where are you? Persons out there may not be connected to Christ, but they're connected to something. Now you're connected to your faith. We have this hope that burns within our hearts, right? What if you didn't have that hope? What if you have that hope but you don't believe and so you feel so hopeless, so helpless, but you have to get through the day because you have to eat, you have to take care of your family, you have to put on that good face that all is well. You're not accepting that there is a problem and you're not fixing it. And then it becomes a bigger problem because, of course, you're going to max the credit card this week, or you're going to do this, or you're going to do that, and you know you need to be practicing. It's just spirals, and it keeps spiraling. And I'm talking to myself because it's everybody. We could be good this decade, and we're not good next because we have just let down our guard. We have to keep reinforcing it. We have to keep encouraging each other. That's how we did it.
Indeed. Let's recognize a question from the congregation. And if there are other persons who have questions, please stand by the mic and we'll acknowledge you. Go ahead.
So I was going to ask, part of it was answered about teaching resilience. What are some of the tips? And I think she mentioned some of them. Tips for building resilience in even our kids. Because these are the same children that will grow up to become addicted. But come back to children addiction. How do you manage a child who have the phone, is addicted to a phone, a video game, or something like that, or even a teenager at university? Kids addicted, people addicted to things like video games and stuff. How do you manage that as a parent? You can't kick them out. You can't kick out the child. Would you take away the computer, the phone altogether, or the computer? How do you manage children who are addicted to video games and telephone and phone and social media and those sorts of things? How do you manage that?
Why are they addicted? That's the first question. Why? Addiction has roots. Addiction has roots. Is it that we cultivated this nature because we were too busy? What is the root of this addiction? 1. 2, that is a reward that they're giving to themselves. You have to change the reward. You have to have that conversation. Reprimand doesn't change a behavior. Reprimand tells them what is wrong. But, okay, I'll give you a case in point. I had a youngster come into the drug treatment court program. Minor offense, very minor offense. And he was there, and he said, "Miss, I just can't see why I need to stop smoking. You know, so if I didn't smoke, would I really there prison?" And it was just, he could not find the motivation to stop. And I said, "All right, are you smoking? Yes. Are you broke? Yes. Do you have your own place? No." You know, and I said, "Okay, so what I said, miss?" I said, "All right, if you must get addicted to something, Get addicted to saving. Get addicted to working hard and saving. I don't know what I did. I flipped a switch, and now I can't stop him from being addicted to saving, to the point where he's telling his family members, look, when I know this, you know, I have to save my money. You understand? And I had to say, look, you're saving, but you have to take care of your responsibilities. And it's just conversations. I can't tell you how much of them come and say, Miss, this is the only place that we go that we hear something good in our ears. So we have to, I know a lot is going on in our minds, but we have to let it out. We have to talk. We have to talk. Find another reward to replace that and have that conversation.
So what I'm hearing is that in terms of the question that Daria asked about a child with an addiction, the first thing is to understand what is the cause and to re-engage or to connect with that child, most importantly. You had a point.
It's also about teaching early life lessons. And so an important word is balance, because that's what a lot of us don't have. And people who get into addiction, that's what they don't have, is balance. Yeah? There is a determination heavy on one side to just continue to use a substance. There are people who drink alcohol and drink it in moderation and go to work and function well and take care of their family and are moving up the academic ladder, etc. They have balance in their lives. So even for the young people who are using the cell phone or Wi-Fi or anything like that, I don't think it's so much that you need to stop using it. It's about beginning to learn the lessons that everything in life has balance. And so you can't be on the cell phone for the entire day. You can't be on the cell phone for half the day. There is a particular time, and then steps in your parental responsibility and authority that says, well, in this house, this is what we're going to do now. But it is important to reason with them, for them to actually buy into that idea and begin to understand some of these key concepts, like balance and doing things in moderation.
And I mean, have a time when, if the youngster enjoys playing games, because right now they know what it is like to play a game, set aside some time and play with them. It doesn't mean that you have to, because you have to understand their world to be able to connect with them. So find a compromise. Find a compromise, but ensure that you connect. And if you're not connecting there, somebody else is going to connect with them.
Indeed. Acknowledge Dr. Stern. Go ahead, Dr. Stern.
Yes, thank you. I agree that there ought to be balance in everything in life. However, I think that we can tell this person, we can make a compromise, go this far, and then we revise. Because there are some things that a compromise can lead you in a position to slip backward. You need to tell, the person needs to know, you're going to compromise for here, but we're going to revise this, and then you go there, and there, and there, until you are free. What's wrong with freedom? Nothing. And it has been shown that no amount of alcohol is safe, none. So therefore, we might compromise, yes, but that doesn't mean you're in a safe place. You're in a dangerous place in that compromise situation.
Yes, definitely. But we, at the Ministry of Health, of course, you know, smoking is not something we're ever going to promote, or drinking. So there's harm reduction. But everything is a process. You didn't get addicted overnight. So breaking a habit, think about a habit that you have right now. How easy is it to break that habit? Some of these habits we've had for many, 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 many years. And some things we can do cold turkey on, but it still requires discipline. So it's a process. And as I said to you, recovery is not an event, it's a journey. It doesn't matter who you are. No, addiction doesn't care who you are. Black, white, green, red, it doesn't matter where you are. You can become addicted. And the same thing would apply. So compromise, this is one thing I always say to persons. In an age of information, we are still not looking at what we're supposed to, at the information that would help us. Because most persons would look at us and say, you know, the National Council on Drug Abuse or Rise Life are like Jamaica's best kept secrets. Still, today, And we're on every platform. There is. But it's still the best kept secret. Because, as I said, we have not normalized talking about these things. Now, once we start normalizing, guess what? Information is going to flow. What kind of compromise will work in this situation? What won't? Get what I'm saying to you? I know that my mom doesn't reprimand my nieces and nephews like she used to do me. It's a completely different generation. You have to understand that as your children evolve, when they were babies, you treated them different, toddlers, the terrible two, and as they come up, we have adjusted. We have to continue that adjustment. We have to continue that self-assessment. And if one thing doesn't work, are we going to keep doing that one thing, or are we going to adjust it to figure out what will work to get through to this person? Because ideally, that is the most important thing, to get through to them, so that they can now think about the change process and want to get on board with it.
I'm going to touch on gambling. I know, Mr. Henry, this is your area of expertise. And
let's clarify that. Gambling treatment and prevention.
Gambling treatment.
Not gambling.
I stand corrected. So part of your title spoke to responsible gambling. I know this is going to be a ticklish issue, because certainly in our church, we discourage all forms of gambling, just as we discourage the abuse of alcohol, I should say the use and abuse of alcohol or any other drug. Tell me about the gambling problem in Jamaica. How big is it? What help is available? For me, it seems like I can still, I'm not that old. I can still remember the time when we instituted the very first lottery in Jamaica. And I realized it was a big issue. The churches came out against it, that. Now you can't even count the different games, how many different games there are. There are so many ways to gamble, online or in person. You place bets about games, this, that, and the next. Tell me about our gambling problem.
All right, so in 2005, the Betting, Gaming, and Lotteries Commission came to RISE and asked, did we have any expertise to deal with the issue of gambling, prevention, and responsible gambling?
Tell us what RISE is, just before
Reaching individuals through skills and education.
Okay, excellent. Continue.
Formerly Addiction Alert. And so we developed the program, and the program deals with prevention, it deals with treatment, and it also deals with research. The prevention piece is probably our strongest piece, and I say this because we live in an era now in Jamaica with the most young people in Jamaica, the most legalized and socially acceptable gambling in Jamaica's history. And from where I sit and the opportunities I have to speak with people at the BGLC, and even just looking at the landscape, gambling in Jamaica is not going to shrink, it's going to expand. And what we're saying is, if it's going to happen that way, then you have to provide programs for people if they develop problems with gambling. It cannot be that we just have gambling and some people fall to the wayside, because we know. We did a study last year on gambling among adults in Jamaica, and it came out that about 5% of Jamaican adults have an issue, a problem gambler. Worldwide statistics lie anywhere between 0.1% and 6%. So we are pretty high. And so we need to develop, and especially we're a small country, right? So we need to develop more programs that go hand in hand with what's happening in terms of the expansion of the industry. Because like I said, the industry is not going to get smaller. And we have to demand that if that's going to happen, there must be places for people to go and get help. This 5% that we're talking about, as well as for young people in schools to be able to develop the correct understanding of gambling and what they're seeing and the lotto on TV, and it's bombarding them. Unfortunately, some of them see it and want to get involved with it. And therein lies the problem. And so the program that we have, we sensitize young people in schools. So we travel around the island right through the year, speaking with young people about what it is that you're seeing, what this gambling is about, and why underage gambling has many, many consequences, helping them to set better goals, etc., etc.
So let's say that I am sitting in Sanctuary this evening, or I'm someone who is online watching the program. Okay. How would I know that I have a problem gambling? What are some of the signs that I can, or the questions that I can ask myself to know whether this is problematic or not?
Well, fortunately, a lot of the criteria, we use the DSM-5 now for diagnosis, and that's a Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And so we use the DSM-5 now, and I think 10 years ago, the issue of a gambling disorder was somewhere, it was called pathological and problem gambling then, and it was logged in the impulse control section of the book. Since then, science has done a lot of work, and we have removed it from impulse control into the area that deals with substance use and other addictions. Why is that important? There's a high correlation between persons who have a substance use disorder and a gambling disorder. So it's important for us to be very close by. Saying that also to say that some of the same criteria that define persons with an addiction to a substance are similar in gambling. There's a tolerance, so the person, John, who started to gamble last year with $1,000 at the gaming lounge, he's now up to $10,000 because the $1,000 doesn't do anything for him anymore. If he tries to stop, he gets very irritable. Most people also with a gambling problem would need a bailout. So at some point in time, they're in a place where they do not have enough money to pay all the bills that they have. There's damage to relationships, opportunities in terms of your work and your job. There are a number of factors that hover around what happens with family in terms of your ability to spend time with your kids. You're spending more time maybe at the track or at the betting parlor, etc. And now on the device, which is now another problem that we have that we're trying to fix in terms of sports betting. So sports betting is becoming very popular. And so we have to ensure that we have the policies as well as the rehabilitative processes in place and the messaging that goes with advertising about sports betting. Because the difficulty with sports betting is that people just think it's football. And I like football, so it's not so much gambling. And that is not true. So I have now had quite a few clients who their issue with gambling, the problems that they have, come out of sports betting and betting more money than it is that they can manage. So once you see a person starts to see that, well, I can't pay my bills monthly because all the money is now going to gambling, you might have a problem. There's a short screen that we have that's called a lie bet, and it's just 2 questions. Do I have to lie to my significant others about my gambling? And the other one, do I find myself betting more and more money over time? If you answer yes to any of those, you need to come and see us.
Wow. So let's say I answered yes to both questions. How do I reach you? What happens when I step into your office?
All right, so we have ads on the radio. We have a toll-free line, 1-888-991-4146.
I don't think you have as many ads as those betting companies.
No, we don't. No, we don't. So you can get counseling on the telephone, but the main aim then is really to get you to come in, and we sit one-on-one and deal with some of these issues. If I just tell you quickly, for example, one of the programs that we have in the gaming lounges is that people who have gambling problems and realize that, they can ban themselves from the gaming lounge. Okay? And so they would sign up a form, come to Rise. I have a database that we put them on. I am in control with all of the gaming lounges, and their picture would go up on the database. Because our gaming lounges in Jamaica, you can't just go in and play with cash. You have to sign up. So they have to have your ID. It's KYC, know your client. So there's information about them. So once they come back there and put the card in, trying to get back in, it would come up. And you can get a ban for 3 months, 6 months, up to a lifetime. And it works, because there are people who, as a result of that, aren't in the gaming lounge anymore. Their life is better. It comes with counseling, because it is not recovery in and of itself. It's not treatment, but it's an adjunct to treatment. And it's a program that, I mean, internationally works, and so we've implemented it here.
Are there illegal lounges that someone can still go and bet?
There are illegal card games and stuff like that that take place, of course. But to go to the gaming lounge proper, remember they're fighting against money laundering and all that sort of thing. You have to have your ID to be able to go in. And our gaming lounges, because we work through the BGLC, it is mandated, it's policy that if someone comes and they're banned, that they're not allowed in. And you could get severely reprimanded and worse if you let someone in who has a ban already.
Can you ban your family member?
Not in Jamaica. However, you can do that in Singapore if you're having problems. But in Jamaica, the person has to come in and get a ban. It's something that we should consider because there are families who are suffering. There are wives who are having major issues and they're unable to do anything because the husband just continuously gambles.
So tell me about responsible gambling now.
I was hoping you wouldn't. No, man, I wanted you to go there. All right, so responsible gambling speaks to the fact that people are always going to gamble, and that's a fact. The issue is that we want the gambling to be at a place where we can monitor it, because if we say that gambling is illegal in Jamaica now, the gambling is going to go underground. When the gambling goes underground, there are lots of problems. It needs to be somewhere where we can monitor and manage what the situation is. So responsible gambling simply speaks to the fact that, just like with alcohol, people have to have a measure of how much it is that I can drink and I am still functioning. How much can I gamble? So let me give you an example. For responsible gambling, you set time and money limits. So there's John who goes to the gaming lounge, and before he goes there, he says to himself, I have $5,000 disposable income. When the $5,000 is gone, he goes home. The person who has a gambling disorder does not do that. When the $5,000 is done, they go downstairs to the ATM and they take more money out, because the idea is, and I should tell you, persons with a gambling disorder primarily have an issue with cognition. They have an issue the way that they think about their ability to influence a game of chance. So his thinking is that I'm going to make this back. And so he takes out the lunch money for the kids for the week because I'm going to double it now. And by the time he blinks, that's gone too. But now he's in a state of what we call chasing. So he's trying to win back the money that he's already lost. And most persons with a gambling disorder have been chasing for years and they'll never get back there. But that's what their brain is telling them, that if you keep doing it, you won before, you can win again.
So it sounds like the approach to gambling, and I'll soon recognize the person at the mic, is similar to our public health approach to tobacco and to alcohol. We know that these things are bad, okay? And they have severe health effects. But in order to control the system, you're imposing a level of control, or you think you're imposing a level of control instead of banning it altogether and it going underground and being illegal.
Yes,
so we're not promoting it at all, but we're saying that this is the reality of public health administration worldwide, isn't it?
Yeah, but let me just be clear before the question. The BGLC, they're not promoters of gambling. They're regulators of gambling, and they really don't have any obligation to running this program. The program that we have with them is probably a new way or a new pattern of working in countries who have gaming industries where it's regulator-led responsible gambling. So it comes with a little bit more clout. So when I walk into a gaming lounge and say, all right, we'd like to audit your responsible gaming information, etc., the gaming lounge will say, well, you're coming on behalf of the BGLC. I'm going to participate.
Okay. We have a question. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Not really a question, but just a thought I'd share. So just thinking about the whole idea of gambling and becoming addicted to it. I remember growing up, you would just say to a friend, I bet you I can reach down there before you. Like just the whole idea of risk and reward and it being ingrained in us from childhood. And of course, as we grow older, like many other things, it manifests in different ways and usually more serious and detrimental ways. So I was just thinking, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on the whole idea of changing the mindset from childhood, the idea of risk management, consequences, the whole idea of rewards, which was mentioned with the drug and alcohol or any other addiction. Because gambling then is not just something that impacts the adults, but it starts from childhood. So I just wanted to hear a little more on that aspect.
Even in terms of prevention, when we started the program initially, we were in high schools. And when I went into a high school and said, how many persons in here gamble? Half the class put up their hand. So I said, all right, this is not universal prevention. I have to go back lower. Right now, that's 2005. Right now, our prevention piece is focused in primary and prep schools. And we're going as far back as grade 4 and grade 3. Because though the aim of it is to keep youngsters who are not gambling, and to feed them the right information so when they get of age, they can make good choices for themselves.
Just going into that demographic though, because that's quite alarming to me. Did you find that we have, is it across the genders, male and female? What age groups are we talking about? And what kind of gambling activities are these youngsters in our schools engaged in?
The data has always shown, and it's universal, that men gamble more than women. In terms of what the kids are doing.
Is there a biologic reason for that? Does anyone know the answer to that question? Do men like to take more risk than women?
That may be a part of it. Also, to those venues that men go to. I mean, now you can gamble on your phone, but the venues that men go to, I mean, if you look at a racehorse parlor, how many women do you see inside there? It's mostly men that are in there that are, you know, and I'm sure there are other factors that contribute to that. But in terms of young people and what they're getting in schools, remember, they can't gamble cash pot and lotto and stuff like that. So what they're playing are card games and dice games. And so guidance counselors in schools have a very hard time. Once they take away a card pack, there's another card pack that pops up somewhere else. One of the things we've been doing to counteract that is to go into schools and teach guidance counselors the prevention piece that we have, so they can go into the classroom and teach the kids as well, because RISE can't get to everybody. That's impossible. And so we rely heavily on collaboration and partnerships.
Hilarious?
I think women are gambling and are addicted. I just don't think have the data because tend not to focus on the women, and it's not as easily detected in women. We know this because even when women come in on a charge, they would rather opt to pay a fine or do whatever than go through treatment, because they just, the stigma, women are more likely to get up and go work and provide for the kids or have to be doing so many other things than to be spending time gambling. And these are the things that they come in and they say to me. I'm not just saying. I remember having clients who said to me, "Miss, you know, I'm here for smoking or drinking, but you know, I'm a girlfriend you need to talk to, because every time I carry home the money, all she do is smoke and gamble." But we're not really counting. We're not really, it's not that great that we're going to put great effort into researching. And then even if I come to a lady and say, "Do you smoke and drink?" Then more often than not, they're going to say no, or not much. It is more of a well-kept secret. And that's what we're finding on the ground, because the men are complaining about it. And I think we really need to do something about it. I know international organizations are training us up because women are using and misusing or becoming addicted.
Yeah, but just to clarify that, we have done studies, and the studies show that men gamble more than women. And I mean, to the credit of the BGLC, studies on gambling are few and far between. And we are now on our third study, hoping to do another one next year. And so it does show that women tend to gamble more. However, not gamble more, sorry, that men tend to gamble more, but women tend to get into a gambling disorder quicker than men. But here's a saving grace. Women tend to go and get help quicker than men and get out of it as well. Of course, men have a tendency not to want to
support.
Yeah, to go and get help, etc. So that's it. I think that the program, we could do a lot more. The industry is growing rapidly, and we have an obligation, especially to young people, to help them to understand what they're seeing on the television, because the ads are coming fast and furious, and you're seeing all these draws and stuff. So it's important, especially the prevention piece that we do.
Okay. Larry,
I just want to share. I mean, the reason for drug use or for any addiction is to feel better, to fit in, to feel good, to experiment, or to do better. That's why most persons get into this, for the reward. It's a reward at the end of the day, and by any means necessary. And peer pressure will tell you whether it is someone coming to you and saying, oh, you need to do this, or, you know, you're going to ask, okay, how did this work for you? And they're going to say, no, man, I eat a gummy bear, a rummy bear, or a weed cake, and yeah, man, I calm my nerves, I'm going to get through the exam, or, you know, whatever reason, it's gonna be just to get to where they need to go and to accomplish what they need.
So I think we probably spoke about this a little earlier, but just for emphasis, what is the link between mental illness, underlying mental illness, and addiction?
I can give you my quick link. There are a lot of people who use substances oftentimes to cope with the mental illness. And what they're doing is what we call self-medicating. The difficulty with that is that you end up now with two disorders, because now you still have the psychiatric condition, and now you also have a substance use disorder. And so when you go into treatment, you're going to have to deal with both of those issues, and I am sure that you see that quite a bit at the University of the West Indies.
And I think one of the things as well is that with the stigma where mental illness is concerned, a lot of persons don't want to seek help. They don't want to hear that they have bipolar disorder or this or that. So they normally use the substance, especially the marijuana, to cover the symptoms that they're having.
Let me recognize the question at the mic. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to point out a question online, and I think it may either be for Rise Life or the Drug Association, and they're asking, do you accept invitations to conduct programs in workplaces?
Yes, actually, the National Council on Drug Abuse has a workplace intervention program as we speak. And yes, that is, anyone can call us and ask for anything to do with public education, prevention, and treatment.
We at RISE, we have a similar program. We actually have an EAP where we work directly with organizations that have employees that need counseling or an intervention. And of course, we're big on presentations and education, so yes.
Okay. Larissa, you look like you're going to say something again.
I was trying to go back to the question on mental health.
On mental illness, yes.
Organized. Stress is a big thing, and a lot of us are predisposed to diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, everything. We're also predisposed to mental illness. One of the questions we ask when we do intake is there anyone in your family that has a mental health issue? Doesn't matter. Some is why you ask. It's okay. We're just gathering information. I'll tell you. Because the stigma surrounding mental illness is so great that we don't even realize its impact on us. I mean, every month, most of us have anxiety. When I see my paycheck, I have anxiety. I don't know about you. I have anxiety every month. Do I stay there? No. But there are persons who have anxious moments, trauma, something that causes anxiety, and we stay there, we don't get help. And we think it's just going to go away. Instead, what happens? We self-medicate, or, trauma on top of trauma, or, we get into the habit now and change our coping skills. No, I'm not going out at night because, Jamaica is just so unsafe. You understand what I'm saying to you? But we're going about our business. And we don't realize that it's impacting our lives because all we're doing is adjusting, instead of living. So, as I said, it goes back to normalizing. Going to the doctor, if you go to the dentist every year to clean your teeth, why are you not going to a counselor every year just to check in? How am I doing?
But does it really have to be a counselor, though? Could it just be a very good friend who has high emotional intelligence and that kind of stuff?
It most certainly can. The point is to do something about it. Because sometimes we can't see what's happening with us, but others can tell us, you don't look so all right today. No, man, me fine, man. But the world is going to stretch inside. But we're fine. We're good, man. We really need to, one, and I want to make this point because it's so important. We beat upon ourselves more than others beat upon us. And so we damage our own mental health because of the thoughts that we have more than what is happening with us. And so one of the things that we really don't do, even as Christians, is we don't forgive ourselves. We don't, I kid you not, if everybody should think about it right now, there's something that you have not forgiven yourself for, and your mind keeps playing it over and over and over and over again. We have to practice forgiveness, and forgiveness of self is the most important thing, because nobody gets in here unless they're allowed, and so you beat upon yourselves more than others.
Acknowledge two persons at the mic. Go ahead.
I'd just like to respond to the same question that you asked about whether or not you can go to a friend and if that is sufficient. As somebody who works in mental health myself, while there is a place for having a friend to talk to, however, I strongly recommend that we need to, just as how we would if we broke our foot or if we had a heart attack, we wouldn't simply go to a friend and stop there. We would go and get a professional to intervene. In the same way for mental health, we do need professionals to intervene.
Okay, thank you.
And that's so important because we did a training with PAHO, and I know the Seventh-day Adventist Church is a part of it. It's called Problem Plus. And what we're doing is training up persons to be first responders in organizations and communities in how to deal with simple issues that they would have and know how to refer them. And those are things that we can do. Get involved with these interventions so that we're not just sitting there, but we can actually do something and know when we can't help, we need to, refer them on to others. Knowledge is really important in how we fight addictions.
Okay, acknowledge the next person. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. So personally, I don't believe in like substance abuse to deal with stress. But you had mentioned that it would be good to deal with. So I'm asking you, like, what are some of the ways to deal with stress, like that are healthy? And it just came to me. Is it that creativity and the arts? Because as an art student, catharsis, purging of the emotions. So like, say for example, you're having like a rough day or a sad day, you watch a comedy and it just makes you feel good, or you watch an action movie and you just say, yes, that just, does for me. Something, I don't know, like that.
Yes, so that's one way of coping. That's one way of coping. Now, handling stress or just manage it or just coping with it is one thing. What's causing the stress is another thing. Is it something that keeps happening? Am I pouring out into my creativity? Am I isolating from everybody else and this is just becoming my world? You know what I mean? So coping is finding healthy ways of de-stressing, but also being able to identify why we become stressed in the first place. Because in truth, we should have a balance. You know, we have church in the morning, AY, and we have social. Social is there for a reason. Coming to church is there for a reason. God didn't play when he said, you know, come and fellowship together. He raised us as beings who need each other. No man is an island, no man stands alone. We need that connection. That is one way of helping. So we can find a number of ways. I remember growing up, we didn't have television as much, so what we used to do, we used to play cards and dominoes and what have you not. Or Sunday matinee was the time for us to gather and do it. And those were healthy ways of, you know, ensuring that we had that healthy balance. Work, church, play, family. You know what I'm saying to you? Having that balance in your life is what helps you to deal with stress. But stress is not always bad. Stress is not, we can't do without stress. We can't do without it. There is sin, there is stress. It's how you deal with it. And I mean, a little stress is good, a little pressure is good. How do you then achieve goals? How do you then go after what you need to accomplish? We have to get into the habit of growing each year. How are you growing? What's happening for you? You know what I mean? Is it that if we're doing the same thing over and over for many years and nothing is changing, what is happening in your life? Every year we get older, we're supposed to be evolving. When we get into retirement, what are we supposed to be doing? Having new ways of having the same fun, because we can't have the same kind of lifestyle we used to have. Are we doing what we need to adjust? What are we going to enjoy then? What makes us happy? You know what I'm saying to you? So we have to think about those areas, and once we're thinking about it, planning, being present, then we tend to combat stress in healthy ways.
Let me just
Richard,
add
go ahead.
quickly that if you think about the things that you do for recreation, don't take them for granted. And I learned that the hard way when I went to work at a treatment center in Grand Cayman, and there was this thing called recreational therapy. And I was asking them, well, what is that foolishness? Well, we're teaching these addicts how to have fun again. Because one of the things that the addiction does is to take away all the fun. And they have to relearn that, because if they don't, when they get back out, and they're not exactly, there'll be emptiness. And what do they do with emptiness? They fill it with the drug use.
Go ahead, please.
Just to augment what was mentioned about how to deal with stress, we oftentimes take for granted our New Start philosophy that we are supposed to embrace, but truly embodied in New Start is how to deal with stress. So the whole business of nutrition, having a well-balanced diet, you know, getting rid of the sugary foods and drinks and having more fruits and vegetables, having a balanced diet, that is very important, because that helps to change the chemicals in our brains and therefore impacts how we feel. Exercise is another very important, reducer of stress. So no matter what type of exercise it is, whether it is walking, a sport, but exercise is easily one of the most effective ways of reducing stress. And having that social connection, as I think was mentioned, social support is absolutely necessary. So those are just some other pointers as well. And also, too, seeking help is also an important way of reducing stress, which I alluded to earlier, where there are times when, our stress is really just our response to any situation that we consider to be threatening to our existence. And sometimes it's just our perception, sometimes we do have the coping resources, sometimes we don't. But if we can, having assessed the situation, if we really truly think that, I really can't manage, then it's important to seek help in order to, better deal with that stressful situation.
Thank you very much. The next person, please.
Good evening, everyone. You alluded a few minutes ago to recreation. That is one of the things I think that is very lacking in Jamaica. We have no place for young people, especially, to go and release that pent-up energy. So that's why they stay at home or with their friends on their computers or TVs. There's no outlet, and they either go out there and get into trouble, or they glue themselves to the TV or their social media, things like that, where their brain is being, sent other places. Let's put it that way. So that is one of the things that we need to develop more in Jamaica. I know when I was growing up, we had more socials in the church. We would go to people's homes, we would have badminton, things like that. We had other more recreation outside of even the church. We met as group, as children, and we could play, and our parents know where we were at the time. But now, we don't have that anymore. I know COVID has caused a lot of that problem, but we need to do something. A couple of days ago, I was with my sister, and we were going someplace, and the supermarket was closed. And there were these young boys out there playing football because there was no place else for them to go to play. So there's that danger of the ball going out in the street, running after it, and so we need to develop more recreation for our young people. Thank you.
So true. I certainly agree, and that's one of the reasons why we implore fellow Jamaicans to come in, train, volunteer, get with the programs that we have, and even start programs in your community. You don't have to be there all the time, but just start it. Find someone, train up a leader, and let's have more of these popping up around, because we can't reach everybody. I kid you not. Sometimes we ourselves are so overwhelmed because we have to ensure that we come out and help and serve, that we need your help. So we know the problem. The solution is let's work together. Let's volunteer. Let's get into it.
Before we take the next question, though, the question I would like to ask, is it that we don't have avenues for recreation, or is it that the alternatives to what we thought were, when we go to the beach and all that kind of stuff, are more attractive? Isn't it just easier to take up your device and sit on it for hours versus going outside and playing football or badminton or something like that? Are the alternatives to healthy recreational activities just more attractive?
I think it's a mindset, because I live in Portmore, and I pass numerous communities on my way home that have what is supposed to be a park, but nobody's interested in planting the grass, keeping the fence up, putting more stuff there, and so it's not a park anymore, it's a piece of open lot. For me, again, it's about perception and the way people view what are the things that are important in terms of being healthy. It's not just about your finances, it's about your mental health as well, and what helps your mental health, your environment. That is just something that we would have to change in this country. But certainly in a country where we have lush greenery, I mean, when I travel, I see Americans in parks clamoring, too many of them in one place. And I come back home and I see us having parks that nobody's in. There's a huge difference.
So the erosion of the family and communities is a problem. It's a major problem. And when there is a problem, persons are going to capitalize. Persons are going to capitalize. If I was to share with you about the new and emerging drugs, which are not really new and emerging, they're here, but they've become so popular because persons have now targeted the generation that needs that fun. I mean, when you talk about rummy bears, gummy bears, when you talk about e-cigarettes, which we're having in schools right now, it's like, it's a momentum that's building. They come in flavors like candy, strawberry, apple, you know, the flavors just make your mouth water. That's the target. Now, if they're putting in the effort to target these individuals, and we as a community are doing nothing, then yes, they're only going to have those as the avenues. And right now, right now the trend is not even to sweat, to have fun. We did a presentation the other day to a group of interns in a government a government building, and we couldn't understand why they were not reacting to any of the activities that we were presenting. But I was on the sidelines and watching, and I was like, oh my goodness. We are the entertainment. We are YouTube. To them, even if they're sitting here talking. And so when they're in front of the screens, they don't have to react. And so there's no reaction because that's all they've been used to for quite some time now. We have to remind them about what it is like to have fun, go for a walk, to have a power walk, to think about things, about purpose. I kid you not. Molly, mushrooms, all of these things. They don't even want to be on this earth with us anymore. They want to experience things that are out of this world. And I kid you not, that has a pull to it because I don't have to think about who like me. I don't have to think about what I'm doing wrong. I don't have to think about all of these things. So yes, it's going to have a pull. Now, to get them interested, we have to connect with them. We could have built park to be full. If we don't connect with them and teach them what we know, you know, I tell somebody that we are so lucky and so privileged because we learned what it felt like to have fun without anything. We didn't have to have anything to have fun. We would sit right in here or in church and listen to the pastor and people place things. Remember that game? And every time he said something about someone, we didn't need anything to have fun. We don't have a clue how to do that. What are we doing about passing on that information on how to cope with everyday life? That connection is what we need so that we can build that momentum so that they can understand that come out and do this is good. We have to spend that time to reach out to them.
Indeed. We'll take the next question or comment.
All right, so not a question. And I'm actually really happy that you mentioned having to connect because I think one of the major things or steps that we tend to skip over or not spend enough time on in any kind of educational or recovery process is the self-awareness. Who am I? Right? And the initiatives, which are great, may not be as impactful because as far as they're concerned, it's not connecting with their idea of who they are. They're lost. And so they need some kind of direction, and a part of that is helping them to define who it is that they are, who it is that they want to be, what they want to accomplish, their purpose. A lot of them are lost. My mommy was just telling me about an instance that somebody shared with at the call centers where they go to work, and then when they leave work for lunch break, they come back, they're all high. What's their purpose? Why are they there? They're literally there just to feed that instead of trying to fulfill some kind of goal or accomplishment or define who they are. So I think self-awareness is a step that we really need to emphasize, helping them to understand who they are. And secondly, not only to show the unhealthy signs of existing or navigating life, but also what it is to be. So how am I to operate? What is a healthy standard? And because a lot of persons, they can't come and report that, oh, I'm feeling depressed, because they look around and everybody is just, that's just what they see. So that's normal. So if I feel sad, it's not alarming because everybody around me seems to be operating that way. So they need to know what it is that is normal in order to identify when it's, something is wrong. So those are just two things I thought I'd highlight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Let me just say before she comes on, and I'm going to reiterate it. We just got some information in our group at work, and here is one online store, and this is what it says: baked weekly, package deals, 2 extra strength brownie bites, and 2 extra strength gummies, $2,000. Now, I don't know who don't like brownies and which youngster don't like gummies. You understand? Those are the things that they're selling them. Listen, you don't have to worry about things this week. If you just use this, you're good, man. You're okay. You just need to get through it. Our youngsters are saying, and we did some research after COVID, and I kid you not, anxiety, stress. If you go through stress, think about these youngsters having stress or feeling stress and just not knowing what to do about it. They don't know what to do about it. Purpose. They lack purpose. They lack insight. One of my clients looked at me and said, but miss, I need to work hard. Just need to be able to pay my bills. I'm nice. I not even want you saying about riches. That's too much, miss. That's too much work. And that is the mindset. They just need to do enough to survive. I kid you not. So they are in survival mode. And it is up to us to teach them how to live. Now, I thought I had to teach my younger family members that cleaning up, washing the dishes and stuff is not something that we just wanted to do. It's for you to learn a life skill. Because you're going to eat. Don't you going to eat when you're on your own? You have to learn it to do that. And so you have to know your purpose. If they don't know the purpose, they don't know the why. If they don't know the why, they don't know where they're going. And if they have no direction, guess what? They're going to follow whatever tide comes.
Thank you. Our next comment.
All right, so I just want to step back a little bit and go back to the children. And I just want to ask the question. You said earlier it's the why. Why are they addicted? And we can look and we can say, okay, the parents have been busy and we don't have the time, and so the video games are what it is that actually keeps them occupied. So that is the why. I understand that to break that, we need to have that connection with them. So we do need to find the time to be with them. My question now is, during the time that you were busy and didn't realize that they were being addicted, they have now become addicts. You've woken up and you have seen that, oh dear, I need to spend some time with them. But they are now at that stage of addiction. How do you connect? Because at this time, you find that they are already in this state of addiction. And so what you're trying to do at this stage is not impressive anymore. How do you deal with that situation? What are the realistic ways that we can connect with them? And also, just thinking about this generation of children, and if I were to put myself into it, I grew up in a different era when we understood what it was to entertain ourselves and not having to have that screen in front of us. How do you, as a parent, in this time, deal with situations like those?
Again, and that's a valid point. Once we recognize that there's a problem, okay. If you notice that your child was developing rashes and things from the heat or anything, what would you do? You're going to what? Find a solution. You're going to find a doctor. You're going to find somebody to help. Get that information going. It's either you're going to get self-help or you're going to take them in. As I said, normalize going for counseling. Counseling don't mean that there's a major problem happening or the house has tumbled down. No, you can come in for counseling. And the good thing about our children is that they're resilient. They can bounce back from a lot, right? Don't take it for granted that they won't. You are given the task of shaping them. Take them to where they can get help if you are unable to do it. And even if you are able to do it, what is wrong with reinforcement? Normalize it. But be present, as I said, and it doesn't matter who it is, from the babies all the way up. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. If it is being done with love, if it is being done with understanding, if they feel like they're heard, you will reach that child. And once you reach that child, then comes the practice. Because you can't tell them, you need to stop this, and then next week you don't bother to check on them again. The discipline has to go on both sides. Because no child is going to be born knowing everything. They are shaped by what? Nature and nurture. Right? So it's what we have allowed them to become exposed to. So we are going to need to do what? Put in the time as well as the child going through that process.
Okay, we're going to take the final 2 comments, or 2 or 3 comments. Yes, Anne-Marie. 3 comments, and then we will wrap up. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, everyone. Well, I like what my sister here talk about self-awareness. But I'm going to make some comments. I like your statements, and I like your definitions for your statements. For the stress and thing there, the recreation. No, I was overhearing what my sister was saying about places. To my understanding, there are a lot of places in Jamaica that people can go and relax their mind to relieve our stress. Sometimes we have to be recreation within our own self, because sometimes when you feel like you're stressed out or you're too heavy burden down, then I guess maybe you can even think in your own mind to go at a place, even sometime by yourself, where you can have a communication level with God and yourself. And that I find most is also very releasing from the stress that you're in. There are times that many people don't understand, even when you're talking about the mental, like communicating, sometimes you wonder if you can really open up to a lot of persons, because I've seen where a lot of persons use it against families. For example, if they know that there's somebody who has a mental issue within your blood lineage, they would say the whole of your family is madness. So sometimes we have to be careful how we go about dealing with these things and who we go to help. So,
well, can I just answer that little part right there? And it has to do with resilience and building resilience. It's human nature to not want to trust people, and to be careful about who we trust. But this is the thing about stress. Stress needs a release. And if you believe in God, you know that the Lord will use your enemies to bless you.
yes.
True?
Yes.
Sometimes releasing that stress, even if you know that Dick, Tom, or Harry is going to say whatever, can save your very life. Because stress can cause you to do what? Get into such a state that even some people even have a heart attack. Not true? Because it gets so bad that it affects you physiologically. Listen. Yes, we're fighting discrimination. Yes, we're fighting stigmatization. We're fighting all of this. But if you stay quiet, it gets worse for you.
Well, I have an experience of my own self where I can say, okay, sometimes if I feel like I'm too heavy burden, sometimes when you relate issues with persons, sometimes they influence you and it seems like there's no hope.
Yes.
So it's like you're going to get worse. So sometimes my belief is that because the love for God and the faith that you have in God, and you go someplace where you know you can communicate with God, and then you see His words speaking back to you. Now, the addiction part, I have been around a lot of persons who have addicted in many things. I know I have a son, he's also addicted in smoking and drinking. Now, my daughter, she just got a phone. So I realized that normally when her tablet is down, she's onto my phone. Sometimes I had to peep and I would say, what is that you're doing? I know she likes the little cartoon games. So I said to her, those things are not real, And I said, not even something spiritual to build your spiritual life. And I said, do you want to go to hell? I said, if God is watching you. So sometimes when I start onto the phone too much, I will always try the conversations that you suggest. I know it really works. And you have to conversate with the children them and try to let them understand that, look here, it is here for it can be of use of a good purpose, but we have to be careful with, because remember that the devil is going about seeking who may devour. So he can also use these things at us so that it let us not focus in the way God wants us to focus.
Definitely.
Now, my son now with the smoking and drinking problem, well, I got a picture of him recently and I realized that he has been losing weight and things has been changing as he's for a young child. So I said to him, why do you want to die so young? Even your enemies, them who reach 50, no, they say that you're not living to see their age. So I realized that he has shaken a part inside of him. Because he is not realizing, because he always say, I'm okay. But he's not realizing that he's killing himself slowly. So sometimes you have to be a good influence to people who are really addicted. Because I asked an elderly man, why do you drink so much and you have a heart problem? He said, drinking is his woman, because his woman cheat on him, so I'm not having any woman. So drinking is human, make him comfortable. Some people will say they smoke because it relieves. But I would say that's what the devil will deceive in you. That's what the devil wants you to think. Because he knows that you cannot see what it is going to do to you or that it is destroying. So it's the influence that you actually bring before a person who are in these type of categories. And we have to be careful, as I say again, to people, because sometimes there are not many people out there that give good influence.
Thank you very much.
Agreed. And can I just say, this is one thing that I'll always tell everyone, and as a treatment provider, I have to think of it. If you're drowning, keep putting your hand up. Just keep putting your hand up. If you feel like you're drowning, keep putting your hand up. Your hand is above your head. Somebody somewhere will see you and come to help. But if your hand is down, we're going to think that you're okay, or we might just miss it. So even in the crowd, when you think nobody is there, God is not going to leave you alone. There is somebody there that He will send. Just keep talking about it. Because if you don't talk about needing help, how is the help going to come? Now, I understand. But we have to walk through the valley of shadow of death all the time. The wheat and the tares must grow together, not true? The good and the bad. Build our resilience so that all of these naysayers don't stop you from getting the help and the support that we need.
Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
A very important point came out. When you're dealing with an addict, you have to listen. You can't condemn. You must take the time to listen. That's one. And never determine why the person is an addict. So you can't, put on that person that you're an addict because you're father is an addict, or because whatever the different reasons that you may presume why the person is an addict. That's one. And two, when you're faced with a situation where someone is an addict, especially a child, the first thing is that you're going to be in denial. The next response as human being is to take away whatever it is they're addicted to. And I think that is a very dangerous response mechanism, but that is what we do naturally. We can't help ourselves. If you realize that your child is addicted to the tablet or the phone, your response naturally is to take away that phone immediately or the tablet. You're not going to stop to think, okay, if I suddenly take away this thing, you're going to end up dealing with rebellion, and serious rebellion. And hence, as you mentioned earlier, the need to get a professional to intervene, because as a parent, you really don't have the skill. So working with the professional, you provide the history, and then the professional will apply all the necessary skills from their training to assist with the situation. Now, Richard, hi. With regard to persons who have been locked away for an extensive period of time in penitentiaries, they would have maybe more like 5 years and so on. They would now have a different mindset. Coming out into society, they're going to have a certain level of anxiety, especially those who were not prepared before going in and coming back to a society that is entirely new to them without any education and perhaps family support and so on. Is there anything in terms of intervention in those places, in those lockup areas, to deal with the problem before the problem comes out to us?
I'm so happy that you asked, because yes, there aren't enough. But the good thing is, and the good news is that the rehabilitation managers within these facilities are making the effort now to do so. And I can say that because I was a part of one of those presentations and interventions in one of the facilities. And I remember them waiting on me to come to do the presentation. And I was a little late because I was delayed. And when we started the presentation and they were going on about it, they were so hungry for the information that, you know, we said, all right, we're going to have to do this again. And so, yes, we're going in with programs. You know, government, the wheels turn, but slowly. But it is something that we have identified. Some of them have even written poems and everything about the fact that this rehabilitation doesn't work because a person is addicted and so forth. So yes, we know that the problem is there and we are trying our best to get there.
You can liken it to a halfway house. So when someone goes into treatment, and I think this is where we fall short a lot of times in Jamaica. After treatment and spending maybe a couple months, then we say, go and take care of yourself on the road. What needs to happen? There needs to be a house that is halfway between the treatment and him coming back out. And it's the same thing for coming out of the prison. So there needs to be a place where the addict can come back to in the evening from work and say, this is my experience today. And a trained person to be able to say, I'll help you to understand this experience. And so he gets better at living on his own and being out in the real world. And it's the same thing for the prison, that there needs to be somewhere a halfway link that the person can get that support.
Okay, we'll take our final question, and then we are going to invite the person for Vespers, Dr. Carol Hall-Booth, to come forward.
Okay, just a question from the online space. Glesricus is asking, is mental illness and addiction to food related?
Mental illness and addiction to food.
You do have mental illness that is related to food issues. You have persons who think they're overweight and they don't eat any at all. And you have persons who do binge eating. So we have different diagnoses that is related to mental illness pertaining to those issues as well. So it depends on the extent that you go to for it. You also have persons who do stress eat. So when they're stressed, they eat a lot. It's not everybody, but some persons do it, but in moderation. But you have some persons who, once they're stressed, no matter if they're not hungry, they still have to be eating.
And some persons don't eat.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is that we're going to have acknowledge the close of the Sabbath. So we'll take our Vesper thought, and then at the end of our Vesper thought, if there are any other burning questions, we will address those, and then I'll ask the panelists in a minute or two to just give their closing thoughts, and then we'll bring our conversation to an end. Dr. Booth?
Good evening, everyone. Happy Sabbath, although it has ended. I'd like us for Vesper Thought this evening to focus on Joel chapter 2, verses 25 to 27. If you have your Bibles, please. We're going to all read together Joel 2, verses 25 to 27. And if you're online, please also follow along. Joel 2, 25 to 27. Shall we go? And I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten, the cankerworm and the caterpillar, and the palmer worm, my great army which I sent among you. And ye shall eat in plenty and be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God, that hath dealt wondrously with you, and my people shall never be ashamed. And ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am the Lord your God, and none else, and my people shall never be ashamed. For the last 2 weeks, we have been talking about various kinds of addiction. And we can liken that, if we just go back to verse 25, we can liken that to verse 25 that is so rich. Many of us may have already read Joel, but we may have forgotten a little. And I'm not going to go into what happened before verse 25 that much, except to summarize to say that there was a lot of darkness. The Bible even spoke about thick darkness. There was a lot of desolation. There was a lot of loss. There was a lot of hijacking of persons' lives, so to speak. But in verse 25, it says, I will restore you the years, not the minutes, not the days, but the years that the locust had eaten. I don't know how many of us are familiar with a cankerworm. Anybody ever see a cankerworm before? You know what that looks like? Not quite? All right. I was curious as to what this cankerworm looks like, so I got a couple pictures to kind of give us an idea. Looks almost like a caterpillar, right? All right. Looks very harmless, isn't it? Okay, well, let's see if it's really harmless. Let's look at what it does after it starts to do damage. After the cankerworm has eaten, that's just the leaves, right? You think that's it alone? Actually, as bad as those leaves look, it can be worse. Cankerworms in an army can become pretty much like locusts. Between 2018 and 2023, in parts of Africa and Asia, there have been swarms infestations of locusts, cankerworms even, that have been actually taking away and threatening our very food supply. And in our lives as well, there are so many things that can take away our joy, our happiness, our peace of mind, right? But the thing is, thanks for those pictures as well, although the pictures may not be very clear to us, but on the left you will see a tree before the infestation of locusts and a tree afterwards. Many of the leaves have already been eaten away. On the photo on the right, there is some amount of life in the soil. There are leaves, there are plants that are growing there. And then after the infestation, it's desolate. Sometimes after we're hijacked with whatever it is, gambling, substance addiction, or it may not be any of those. It may be a loss of a relationship. It may be the loss of a job, loss of money. It may be feeling deeply depressed and hopeless. I just want us to focus as we go through this week. I don't know what your circumstances are, but our Bible tells us that He, God, will, not shall, not might, He will restore us. The years that the locust has eaten, the cankerworm, the caterpillar, the palmer worm, the great army, just as how we saw that swarm of locusts in the photograph, that can be really overwhelming. Sometimes, persons have one particular stressor in their life and they think that that is enough. That might just be the leaves that the enemy is trying to eat away. And then on top of that comes something from work, something from home, something from church, something from outside, the neighbors. And it just gets more and more compounded and we feel that we can't cope. But this evening, the Lord reminds us through Joel that He will restore us and that we will never be ashamed. And so I want to commend us this evening as we go throughout this week to remember that God promises us that He will restore the years, sometimes the decades, sometimes the days, sometimes just the moments. For the young people, you might be having to redo an exam or redo a course at university, or you might have to sit out a year or two just to find yourself again. But God reminds us that He will restore the years that the cankerworm has eaten away, and that afterwards we shall eat in plenty and be satisfied. We will praise the name of the Lord that hath dealt wondrously with us, and His people, all of us, will never be ashamed. So, as we go throughout this week, please just remember, and I would implore us to read all of Joel, but Joel chapter 2 is very stormy. It's like a drama. But the most important takeaway message is that He will restore those years that the cankerworm has taken, all of those hijackers that we have in our lives, all of those stressors, all of those things that we think we just can't manage, God has promised to restore. I will invite Brother Little, if you can just come and pray for us, please, to close. To end Vesper, sorry, because we're going to continue with the program afterwards.
Thank you very much. My son realized that I can't even climb up here this evening. Shall we stand, please? Father in heaven, we just want to pause to thank you for having called us out of darkness into your marvelous light of truth, to the extent that we could have come apart today to celebrate the Sabbath with you. And as the curtain comes down, as we face this new and this untried week, we want to commit our lives fully into your hands. We want to pray that you will have mercy upon us. We've been talking about addiction and how easy it is for us to become addicted to something. We pray that you will stay the efforts of the devil and help us to become addicted to you, addicted to Holy Spirit. And throughout the course of this week, we will allow your Holy Spirit to guide our steps, to guide our thoughts, to guide our actions. Let us stay clear of those cankerworms that can do us great harm. This we humbly pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
So over the last 2 weeks, we have been, question? Come forward, because there's no mic down there. Over the last 2 weeks, we have been discussing issues that hijack our health. We have a final question, and then we're going to wrap.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So my question, firstly, is there a clear definition for what stress is? Before you answer that question, though, the reason I ask is because I think that a lot of the things that we consider stress to be might be something else. Also, a person who might be stressed or going through something, a mental condition or mental illness, might be in denial stage. They might be in the denial stage for an extended period, not realizing that they have moved from that stage to maybe stage 4 or 5, depending on how many levels the illness or the situation might have. So for me, what I would want to leave here with today is a clear definition of what stress is.
Stress. No, I'm not an expert here, so someone help us out here. What's a clear definition of stress?
Sorry, while you're coming up with the answer for stress, it's a very important question, very, very important. Anyone who is parked over at the Phoenix Avenue Center, of course, Thomas, please let us know because the security.
Stress.
Right. So it's funny that that question came at the end because it's an excellent question. We said initially, for me, everything is about perception. So when the gentleman is saying that some things for him may not be stressful and for others it would be, I agree 100%. So again, it depends. You spoke about some levels. It depends on what sort of makeup and awareness and resilience and strength that you have. But I mean, by definition, we would say anything that would be causing you to make you feel threatened. You could put anxiety in there. But again, the anxiety is not always bad because sometimes it's that anxiety that causes you to kick to another level. So again, we're talking about what's your perception of the situation and the challenge that you see ahead to be able to determine whether or not, and of course there are different types of stress, but I understand what he's saying about it differs from person to person, but again it has to do with the effect that it has both physiologically and psychologically on an individual.
Okay, I guess one of the definitions that we can look at is anything that can cause strain on you emotionally or mentally. So my mental health might be stronger than somebody else. So whatever is causing strain on that person may not cause strain on me mentally or emotionally. So it depends on the person overall.
I hope that answers the question. Larissa, you want to comment?
Yes, so The definition that I found here is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. Now, remember I said earlier, every month we have things that causes us stress. A heavy workload, you know, work-life balance, that can cause stress. Stress is something that we cannot live without. It's a part of life. It's almost like night and day. It's gonna come. That's why we ask God to help us to be able to face our problems, not that the problems would not exist. So stress is by definition anything that causes, that, you know, you have to put some effort into it or causes a reaction.
Okay.
Dr. Stern?
Yes. So one definition I've heard long ago is that anything, depending on perception, that would cause you to either want to fight or to flee. So anything that elicits a fight or flight reaction could be regarded as stressful.
Thank you.
Very good. On that same issue of what stress is, stress partly, and I could be wrong, but it is a response. It's a response, right? So it's anything that makes you feel emotionally or physically tense or under stress or tense. And so it's a response because a particular situation can be occurring. Okay, somebody can be late for work. And they said, okay, I'm going to be late for work. Let me just call in and just let them know I'll be late, or let me just relax, and let me just make sure I arrive safe and healthy and fine. And then the other person, no, Jesus, I'm late. And I'm late for, and your blood pressure gone up, and your cortisol level gone up, and therefore your blood sugar, everything is up. So it is important to learn how to not have that stressed feeling and coping, taking deep breaths, looking at things, looking at your cup as half full versus half empty. Look in your situation and assess the situation properly so that you do not live in a continuous state of having your cortisol level elevated and your blood pressure elevated, because the continued pressure response to situations like this can lead to heart attack and stroke and memory loss and problems with your physical body. So that is my response to stress.
So stress is a natural occurrence. It's just how we cope with it that determines its impact on our lives.
Please go ahead.
Well, I don't have a definition for stress, but earlier you would have touched on purpose, and I realize that I need to comment on it because it's a very important topic. Now, I know the purpose of man is to fear God and to keep his commandment, but I'm looking at it from the angle of it may be hinged on career, but what you do on a diurnal basis, like what are you here to do to help others? Now, some persons don't find that until later in life. Some persons discover it very early. And I don't know if you've ever observed just somebody walking in their purpose, just, you know, there's no Monday blues. Like, what is Monday blues? You know, I'm looking forward to the weekend end fast enough. But how do we incorporate this into the curricula? How do we incorporate this in restorative platforms like what you have to just help somebody to identify that thing? I mean, Simon Sinek speaks about it, finding your why. And I mean, you go to a lot of these self-help conferences and so on, and persons keep using finding your why, and it's just being used loosely, but have we actually dissected it to help somebody to walk in their why? Like, what is that thing? Very cliche, not my quote, not my original thing, but a quote that says, what is it that you would do at 2 a.m. in the morning? And so I think sometimes a lot of the things that probably contributes or causes stress is persons not identifying that thing that they should be walking in. So it should be incorporated. whether it is that a child likes dancing or cosmetology and it falls outside of the traditional professions, we should actually encourage them if that is what they're going to use to help somebody. You never know. And you know, it will help to reduce a lot of the anxiety and depression that persons face on a daily basis. I'll wrap up by saying, I remember when I was in university, and you know, when you leave in high school, everybody was going to become a doctor or a lawyer, and so in a yearbook, you put that you want to become a pathologist. But then I went to university, and at that time, science and technology, I started doing chemistry. But then the chemistry between chemistry and I died, and I had to realize that at some point. And I remember a friend invited me to another faculty to do an elective course, and I fell so much in love with it because I felt like it spoke to me, and you know, I could relate to it. And when I started doing that, I actually moved out of the faculty I was in and into that other faculty. And at that point, I could make some connections. So sometimes persons are going through a very stressful period. They're just at a place that they really shouldn't be. And sometimes they're doing it for family, because I lived on campus. And I saw a lot of students who were studying particular or specific disciplines for their parents, and parents sometimes don't even realize how they contribute to the stress level of their children. Thank you.
Thank you for that point.
Thank you so much. And that is so true. And that causes even more stress when we don't know our purpose, when we realize our kids probably don't know theirs, and we worry about it. But Purpose finds us like wisdom. It comes when it comes. God teaches us lessons until we learn the lesson He's meant to teach us. And purpose is a thing. I may have this purpose in this decade and another in another. But what we can do is not try to fix the situation, but just keep encouraging each other. If we were to speak life into everybody every day, you know what you could do for someone? You could probably save somebody's life. There are many persons out there who even seem like they're walking in their purpose. Their purpose is to inspire others, but they themselves may not know their purpose. But they keep saying things to improve other people's lives. So we have to keep imparting not the negative, but the positives, and still talk about the negatives. We will find our purpose, but we have to keep pouring it to each other. Be our brother's keeper. Come on, encourage. So whatever we do, we accomplish it, we get to where we're supposed to go.
Sister Abdul?
All right, so just a quick comment when the question was asked about the definition of stress. From my readings, what I've found is that, and Larry said it, it's the textbook definition of stress really is anything. Stress is on a pendulum. So you can be in a state of eustress or distress. And distress, I think, is what most of us are familiar with calling stress. But it's when you are at a point where, based on your environment, how you're socialized, your tolerance level, and so on, that you become to be pushed to the point of distress when you're not able to cope. Then you're on the other side of the pendulum. But it goes both ways, and we do need stress. So just getting up and walking up here, it takes some amount of stress. You have to use your muscles and so on. So that's eustress. That's something that we can handle. It's regular stress that we go through every day, and it's needed. If we don't have stress, we die.
Will we have stress in heaven?
Absolutely. We are told that you're going to need to build you're going to have to labor.
Is that stressful?
Yes, so that's what I'm telling you. Stress is not just distress. The textbook definition of stress is that it really is on a pendulum. You have eustress and you have distress, and it's important to understand that concept. It's when it gets to the point of distress and you're not able to appropriately handle it, that's when it becomes a problem.
Thank you very much. The next comment?
Yes, good evening, church.
Good evening.
There's a little mental trick which I've found in the last little while to overcome challenges. And what I picture is this, is that Jesus Christ is tied up, and the only person He has to rescue Him is myself. And whatever it is I have to overcome, if I don't accomplish that, then He's going to be executed. So it might sound like a strange way to motivate yourself, but it allows me to rise to a level to overcome the challenges that I face. And it's something that if other people were to adopt, they could probably have the same, effect.
That is referred to, is it psychotherapy? Is that a form of psychotherapy where you mentally visualize something and your way out of it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Another thing, a good point that you mentioned is about talking about God. But when we deal with the 12-step program, we do mention God or the higher power. Because not everybody believes in God, but they have something that they believe in. So instead of pushing God down their throat, to let them talk about their higher power. So whatever can help to bring them through the situation, to help them with their recovery process.
Okay, I don't see anybody else approaching the mic. So I think we're going to wrap our program this evening. We have been talking about things that hijack our health for the last 2 weeks. And I think it has been a very important discussion for all of us. I hope the program has been very informative, and we're very grateful to our panelists who have devoted quite a bit of their time to be with us and to impart their knowledge. And what I will do now is just in the final few minutes, ask each of our panelists to leave with us their parting thoughts. And additionally, if they want to, they can also let us know how they can be contacted or reached, just in the event that persons are in need of their services. So I'll start with Ms. Millings. Go ahead.
Okay, there was a lot of things that were discussed. One of the important things as parents, persons need to realize that even though you're a parent, you need to be a friend to your child as well. You need to sit and talk to your child. You need to do therapeutic listening. Let your child speak without you interrupting them, so they know that you're listening, and actually replay what they said to you or say it over, so they know that yes, you were listening to what they're saying. And if you want clarification, you ask for the clarification. When you do things like that, it shows that you care. You also get more clarification on what they're thinking, how they're feeling. And it helps you to guide how you talk to your child, how you'll guide them. So that sometimes when you do things like this, it helps them where it comes into peer pressure. Your daughter mentioned something about self-awareness. When we look at that in the program that we do, we look at also self-esteem, self-love, self-forgiveness, because all of these come into play with each other. Addiction recovery is a rough road. Addiction doesn't just affect the person who is having the problem with the substance or whatever they're addicted to. It does affect the family as well. As family members, yes, you are hurt by what the person does when they're an addict, but you still have to show them some amount of support. You have to cut back on certain things, yes, but you still have to show that support. Because that is what they're going to also need to help them through the recovery process. Because when everybody gives up on them, they're going to find it much harder to go down that road of recovery. I can be reached at University Hospital of the West Indies, Addiction Treatment Services Unit. The straight line number is 977-0705.
Thank you very much. Larice?
I think I've said a lot. I am so happy that our churches and communities are having these discussions and taking time out to talk about addictions. I can't tell you how much we've been canvassing for persons to do so, and we will continue to do so. And I'm always going to say, the more we know, the more we can help. The less we know, the more vulnerable we are and our children are. And tips for families, normalize these conversations. I can't say it enough. Normalize the conversations about addictions and especially substance misuse. Not just the harmful effects, but the positive and correct ways that they can be used. Pay attention to the medications in our house. Pay attention to the habits and what's trending in the lives of our children. If we don't know, we don't know what to look for. Remember, addiction is a brain disease and should be treated like any other non-communicable disease. Get help. and the help just might not be for you, but you may just be referring somebody. At least you know how to help them to get help. Tips: nagging is pointless. Patience over surveillance. Be positive. Positive affirmations go a long way. Provide clear warning signs. Self-care and care for each other. Very, very important, because we don't realize that we respond to the negativity of addiction. And we have to be careful that our reactions are not actually, one, enabling or hindering that person from reaching the point where they need to get help and for recovery. So pay attention to that. And of course, you can reach us on all platforms. Treatment is free. You don't have to wait until it becomes problematic. Matter of fact, if you identify that anyone is addicted, reach out for help to anything, and even yourselves. When it comes to substance misuse, if it is a child under 18, then the National Council on Drug Abuse or Addiction Treatment is required. You're required to take your child in for treatment or assessment. Adults, let's not shy away from helping or encouraging them just to come in and know their status. Sorry. Knowing their status means that we can figure out whether or not they need help or they just need education. But doing nothing does nothing.
Thank you, Larice.
All right. I'm just going to leave you with the idea that people use drugs or get into addictions because it changes the way that they feel. Addiction, for me, is a feelings disease. With that said, it's very important for you as an individual, not just persons with an addiction, to be in touch with how you feel. That can trickle down into your family. So if you start getting your kids to be in touch with how I am feeling, because how you feel interacts with how you think, which interacts with your behavior, you'll be able to short-circuit certain behaviors. And I'll leave you also with some homework. For those of you who have never investigated or read on emotional intelligence, I encourage you to do some research. It is something that is completely lacking in our society, but most necessary for you to be able to interact with other people and understand that how you act and how you think and how you feel impacts others. So you have to be able to manage that. Rises on all platforms. Again, the one that I am working in now, the field is gambling treatment and prevention. We welcome any other presentations at schools, at workplaces, etc. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and we have a telephone lifeline that's open 24 hours. It's 1-888-991-4146.
Thank you very much. So on behalf of the Andrews Memorial S.D.A. Church, I would like to thank you all very much. Congregation, can we just say a rousing amen? We truly appreciate the time that you have spent with us, the knowledge that you have shared with us. The information has been invaluable this evening. And just reflecting on our Vesper thought by Dr. Booth, I love the story. The cankerworm is all these addictions that are affecting us. But what does God promise? He promises that He will restore all of that. So if you have an addiction, if you have a problem, never give up. Taking your life is not the answer. There's treatment out there, there's support out there, there are persons out there who can assist and help you to get your life back together again. Thank you very much, everyone. Shall we just bow our heads for the benediction? Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you again for this Sabbath and this program. I pray that information will go there and touch lives and bring persons back to you. And as we approach this untried week, we place our lives in your hands, guide and protect Give us successful and overcoming weeks, we pray, for Christ's sake. Amen. Thank you very much.